About a year ago, I started looking for a home in the Stillwater area, and through that process, my realtor and my friends kind of thought I was crazy. Now, my realtor thought I was crazy because I would always take along a trowel and a bucket. She would get frustrated at me because I would check out the soil type almost as much as I would the house. But let me tell you, I found the perfect home, and I also found probably one of the few areas in Stillwater that has nice sandy loam soil. Now, the downside of that is that the landscape was a little bit underdeveloped. As a matter of fact, there wasn't any landscape at all other than a few trees that were really starting to decline, some of the larger trees. The grass was very sparse, and the foundation really was nil, or there weren't any kind of foundation plantings at all. Now, my friends thought I was crazy because it's almost 3 acres, and with the schedule that I have, they couldn't understand how I would be able to take care of it. Well, let me walk you around and show you some of the things that I developed to make it a low-maintenance landscape. Now, the first thing that I did was kind of do an overview or a survey of the property and look at my most visible areas from the road or the general public, as well as the areas that I would want to use personally, and I tried to incorporate where the existing plant material, such as the larger trees, were at, to come up with the overall planting scheme. Now, initially, since there wasn't anything and it was a lot of scattered areas of grass, it took me almost an hour and a half to mow the lawn just around the home. But now that I've put in some of the landscaping beds, I can mow the area in about 20 minutes. So I've cut down a lot of time just in trying to establish nice landscape beds versus the area that I'm mowing. And one of those that I feel like is probably the most visible from the back porch where people can park and where I would be entering the house is right in this area. Now, this bed used to be an existing type of lawn plus a area where there was parking, and you can still see some of the gravel. But I've spent between 6 and 8 months just preparing the soil. And I wanted this to be a complete bed, and I've not even finished it at all. But I hauled in silage topping, compost manure, tilled it in, and then last winter I put Austrian winter peas to hold it in. And I spent the entire time just working up the soil, and I've done that in several locations around the home as far as my priority in planting. Then this past spring I've started putting in a few annuals, perennials, those types of things. And since I can't really afford an irrigation system yet, I've been using soaker hoses. Now, one area here that I want to mention about is with this bed, I still need to get some of the rocks out, but eventually I'll be putting a mulch over it too once I get most everything planted. But I've been real pleased with the color, and of course going into the winter now, it's in the down season, but it's going to be a very beautiful first impression coming into the home. Now, since I've made this an entire landscape bed, I wanted it to fit as far as the design, so I've got it where it curves into some other existing beds here on the west side of the house. This side of the house is very visible, so again it was in the first part of my landscape, and I've put a lot of foundation plants based on the west side, based on windows, how much sun, etc. Things like spirea, crepe myrtle. But it's also been very challenging because of these 2 large cedar trees, which really are a nice windbreak. But I really don't want to have any type of turf in this area because of the sparseness from the shade of the trees and also from the house. So I'm going to mulch this entire area, and I want to thank my friends at Asplin for just dropping off some mulch, but I've used it around the trees. But one thing that I'm doing in this particular area is covering up some old feed sacks because I've had a little bit of Bermuda come in here. So first I put down the feed sacks, recycle it from the farm, and then cover it with about 4 inches of the mulch, and that will help hopefully kill out the Bermuda grass. So it's going to be a nice area that I do in here. And again, I've bordered all of my trees with the driveway and the mulch, and it's inexpensive. Matter of fact, in most cases you can get it free. So this would be very low maintenance, cut down on my mowing costs. Now in the front, I've done the same thing by bordering a lot of the larger trees, bringing the beds out past the drip line with the mulch so I don't have to mow or try to force grass to grow in an area that it won't grow. I've also put in some bedding plants with for the cool season, but things like bulbs for next year's growth, and another visible area where you drive in from the main road. Now the front of the house is on the north side, so I've selected plants that will do well in the shade on the north side. And again, I've not even put in all the plants because I'm a little bit particular in trying to find things that are unusual and also things to try for Oklahoma that maybe aren't too successful, but we'll try and see how they'll do for our conditions. So I think the key is, in this first part of my landscape that I want to tell you about, is don't be afraid to cut out the lawn. It has its purpose, but try to reduce as much in conjunction with trees and make nice planting beds, because just the mulch can be attractive too. Well, as time goes on and we finish other phases, I'll bring you up to date, but that's all the time we have today. Be sure and join us next weekend here on Oklahoma Garden.